Hello and welcome to the SEC Passing Floor Analysis ahead of the 2024 season. I am your host on this video, SEC StatCat Clark Brooks. So right off the bat, you might be asking yourself, what the is a passing floor? Well, not every quarterback has the same environment. Not everyone has good offensive lines that give them time to throw, or play callers that like to buoy their bottom lines with screens, RPOs, and drop back play actions, or get them on the move outside the pocket to try and facilitate their passing lane. So in order to try and standardize all these different variables, all these different types of environments, a way to standardize that is just to look at a true passer's performance in dropbacks without screens and RPOs inside the pocket when not pressured. Again, if you can't just go out there and execute without any adversity or any type of scheme elements, problem. So these snaps will account for the plurality of our passers' profiles, not the majority like in years past. It still will help give us a good idea of who they are. So we're going to have high, okay, and low floor passers, and we're going to add a little bit of an element to see if they are firm or flimsy based on their process metrics. So for our transfers, we're going to use their statistics from our impact study earlier this summer. So this is going to be looking at their hardest opponents and how they performed against them. For our SECers, the returners, we're actually going to take their straight stats for what they are. Carson Beck, QB1, kicks us off here with a high, firm floor ahead of 2024, mostly because of his ability to consistently place accurate passes. So his raw accuracy percentage was just under 70% last year, and it's the second highest among our returning SECers. And when you apply more weight, the further his passes traveled beyond the line of scrimmage, his depth-adjusted accuracy holds the gold medal ahead of this fall. So obviously, with a lot of on-target catchable passes, he was able to snag fantastic results. He has the top success rate, adjusted net passing yards per attempt, and first down touchdown rate within the SEC ahead of this fall. So even though, yes, he was a quarterback in a great environment with a good play caller, he still stood to be a really strong passer within structure. But he was not perfect. So already his interceptable pass rate was in the danger zone at 7.4%. Well, in our floor exercise here, that got worse. A tenth of his passes could have been picked off. Now, in our impact study earlier this summer, one major area of opportunity for him was passing under pressure. Against his hardest opponents, nearly a fifth of those balls could have been picked off. But as we see here, even when you look at him in clean pockets without play actions, yeah, he can still press too much, way too much. So it really does undercut a lot of the other good stuff on his passing profile. Still top 5 basically across the board in capturing results with really strong depth adjusted accuracy. And despite seeing a nearly 3-yard increase in average depth of target in these situations, his uncatchable pass rate maintained a flat trajectory, which not a lot of passers can claim the same. So you can notice his raw down-to-down accuracy did get worse, but for me, yes, it's just that major interceptable pass rate red flag that will continue to undercut his profile, because when you're looking at his results, he checks the boxes for having over half of his attempts find situational success. He checks the box for having over 40% move the chains or score points, while having over an eighth of them gain 20 yards. So yeah, on a down-to-down average basis, he just does a lot for you. But still, when you put the ball that often near defenders and give opportunities to opponents to kill drives, that is just not going to fly. But still, based on everything else, I still believe he has a high firm floor ahead of this fall, assuming that stuff gets cleaned up. So one of college football's top playmakers also has a high floor ahead of this fall, but unlike Carson Beck, Jalen Milroe is going to be more flimsy than firm thanks to a wonky process. Less than 26% of his attempts qualified for our floor analysis last year, and he's going to be playing in a brand new scheme. So there's going to be no guarantee that what we saw last year is going to carry over. But still, because of his skill set, I do still think it's going to be a safe bet that his high verticality and his pop for Alabama's offense is going to maintain across 2024. So with a very high average depth of target like we just mentioned, we know that that is going to help his potency some. And almost 18% of his attempts went for at least 20 yards last year, highest in the SEC, and over half of his passes gained situational success with over 40%, resulting in a first down or a touchdown. Fantastic. So even though he did take sacks, that was a big hang up on his profile. His adjusted net passing yards per attempt holds the bronze medal overall amongst our SEC returners. So when we're looking at our floor analysis, it is a good sign to see that despite the high degree of difficulty, that all of his ball placement metrics improved. So yes, you can knock that a bottom 3 overall accuracy, depth adjusted, and catchable pass rate is something you're concerned about, but still in structure, there is silver linings that he can further improve performing as a pocket passer. He's top 4 in interceptable while being around the conference average in just general ball placement skills. But still, those awesome results are one thing that you cannot dismiss in terms of evaluating his passing floor. His adjusted net passing yards per attempt in these instances was over 12 yards, highest in the conference. His success rate was near 60%, highest in the conference. And again, his explosive pass rate maintained the gold medal as well. So yes, there is going to be some things to monitor with him moving forward, whether it is, adjusting to the new style of play, getting the ball out faster, maybe being a little bit more of an offensive executive moving forward, because there's no doubt in my mind outside of the pocket, outside of structure, he still can absolutely press the ball downfield, get those big explosives, but it's just that down-to-down stuff. So it's nice to see that his accuracy improves and he maintains great results within structure. I might not be the biggest Connor Weigman fan in the world, but I still think he's going to have a high, firm passing floor ahead of this fall based on what he has shown us each of the last 2 years within structure. So there's no secret that A&M has allowed a lot of pressure, and when looking at multi-year SEC starters, no one has a higher career pressured pass rate than Weigman. So clearly, his overall stats were affected by that degree of adversity. And when you're looking at him in our floor situation, oh my gosh, massive gains that you just cannot overlook. Amongst our SEC returners, no one saw a bigger boost in overall success rate, first down touchdown rate, explosive pass rate, raw accuracy, and uncatchable pass rate than Weigman. Yes, that is a lot of improvement. And when you're looking at his floor statistics, he's basically a top 3 quarterback within the conference. So yes, it's really easy to get behind him this fall, but it is really important to note he did not play the hardest schedule last year. Half of his opponents finished in the bottom 5 in EPA per pass allowed. He's yet to play a top 35 pass defense in that regard in his entire career. But still, based on what we have seen, you gotta like the fact his interceptable pass rate is the lowest in the conference. His uncatchable pass rate is the lowest in the conference. His raw accuracy is the lowest on the conference. And he wasn't just dinking and dunking. He was pushing the ball downfield. Top 3 average depth to target, top 3 adjusted net passing yards per attempt, success rate, and explosive pass rate. And no SECer has a preferable first down touchdown rate in these floor situations than Weigman's. Nearly half of those throws resulted in at least a conversion or a score. So awesome. Again, when we're looking at benchmark statistics, that's what you like to see from just success rate, let alone first down touchdown rate. So that really does help raise his floor and provide a firm foundation for him to perform this fall for the Aggies. I am a believer of Jaxson Dart ahead of this fall, and I do think he has a high pass ceiling, but his pass floor is just okay. There are just some concerning things that you can't dismiss no matter how much you like him at this point in time. And of course, when looking at his passing floor analysis from 21 and 22, he was not a strong performer. Of course, he does play in the super spread type of offense that doesn't necessarily maximize these environments inside the pocket without guises, but still, his results were fairly good instead of being mediocre. So overall, top 3 adjusted net passing yards per attempt, first down touchdown rate, and explosive pass rate amongst our SEC returners. We do like to see that. We also like to see that his depth adjusted accuracy that applies more weight the further passes travel downfield was also among the top marks in the conference, but still way too often did he put the ball into harm's way. Already in the danger zone overall, his interceptable pass rate was nearly 12% in our passing floor situations. And again, that depth-adjusted accuracy did get worse despite seeing generally improved raw down-to-down accuracy clips and accurate and uncatchable pass rate. So his results were still kind of good, but just not, elite. So that's why I'm still leaning for the more okay platform more than a high passing floor. So he's going to be a flimsy outlook because of that, because he can absolutely build upon this to be the best version of himself this fall, but no one can dismiss an interceptable pass rate of nearly 12% and being outside the SEC's top 5 in just overall success rate and depth adjusted accuracy when there's no environment, when there's no adversity to blame for your shortcomings. So yes, I do love the upside. I love the mobility. I love the mid-range accuracy overall. I love his just raw production off of play action, but when you're just looking at him in structure without guises, he presents to be more of a good, not great quarterback. Some might argue that Brady Cook has a high passing floor based on how he is set up to succeed, but just based on what I've seen, I think it is still more close to okay. But don't kid yourself, it is a very firm floor based on the fact that he is the only SECer to see the majority of his snaps come clean inside the pocket without guises. So that is absolutely going to carry a lot of weight to how he projects towards this next level here. So again, I like a lot of things, fairly good, not great returns. You got to like the fact that his overall adjusted net passing yards per attempt, success rate, first down touchdown rate, explosive pass rate, and interceptable pass rate all crack the SEC's top 5 ahead of this fall. But when we're looking at his process metrics, there is a little bit of underlying concern. He sees less explosiveness and is more prone to put the ball into harm's way within structure. And even though his adjusted net passing yards per attempt did see a marginal increase, his raw yards per attempt did dip. So when we're looking at his depth adjusted accuracy, we do like the fact that it did cross that 50% threshold. We do like to see that his raw and uncatchable pass rate did get better despite seeing a little bit of an uptick in average depth of target. It's just the fact that nothing really jumps off the page in our floor situation. Sure, he was a fairly decent performer in terms of placing accurate passes and getting results. He just didn't have elite pop. So that's why I just think he's just good, not great at this point in time. So Luther Burden, Theo Weiss, he's going to have weapons that can help elevate his results. It's just I don't think his ability can help elevate the offense by itself. He's going to have to use some scheme elements to provide more pop, more potency, push the ball downfield. But in terms of just down-to-down consistency, what to expect from him, he does have an undeniable, firm, good passing floor. Graham Mertz is a mixed bag quarterback. Of course, he morphed into being the SEC's checkdown Charlie this past season and was one of the top caretakers in all of college football. He hunted for surefire completions underneath, and he did not put the ball into harm's way. In terms of raw accuracy percentages, he owns one of the top clips in the conference, both overall and in our floor situations. But just because he did not necessarily capture potency or provide a whole lot of pop, I can only say it is just an okay, firm floor at this point in time. Of course, Florida is a scheme that likes to use a whole lot of deception with motion and play actions, but within structure, it just was not a good sign whatsoever that both his success rate and first down touchdown rate moved the wrong way. Certainly, you can blame some of that to drops. Over a tenth of these attempts were just resulted because of Butterfingers, and those are just plays left on the field. Moreover, he was just not as potent that you would like to see. Very middle of the road type of results in that respect. But you do like the fact that he did see gains in depth adjusted accuracy, uncatchable pass rate, and seeing a 1.5 yard increase in average depth of target. But I should mention his 8.4 floor average depth of target would have been the lowest amongst our returners, and it still finished below our impact average from our quarterback analysis earlier this fall. So yes, you like the fact that some things maintained itself, that raw accuracy, that adjusted net passing yards per attempt, but still there was the stuff left on the table. And until he can prove that he can consistently provide extra juice for this offense, throwing downfield and capturing those types of completions, he's still going to only have an okay, moderate outlook as a passer. Quinn Ewers does have a high ceiling. He has a live arm. He's going to be in a great environment, and his play callers arguably the best in college football. So he is often dealt plenty of scheme elements, motions, play actions, RPOs to be the best version of himself. But based on his showings against his hardest opponents each of the last 2 years in our passing floor analysis, it's really hard to say that he has anything beyond an okay, flimsy floor at this point in time. Against his hardest opponents each of the last 2 years, he finished below the group average in every single ball placement metric. So even though he did go out and capture fine results, the process is just worrisome, to say the least. So that's raw accuracy, depth-adjusted accuracy, uncatchable pass rate, adjusted completion percentage, and interceptable pass rate. Each of the last 2 years against his hardest opponents in our impact study on the wrong side of the average. That has to be addressed without a doubt, because yes, you do like the fact that his overall statistics do jump out some. Again, this is weighted against his hardest opponent, so it's not as cut and dry as some of our other SECers. And when you see the second best returning depth-adjusted accuracy, you do like that. But again, like I mentioned, the process is the big concern there. Interceptable pass rate, oh my gosh, it practically doubled. His accuracy percentage fell off by over a dozen points, and his depth-adjusted accuracy was going to track to be outside of the top 8 in the conference. No one has a worse uncatchable pass rate in this regard. Almost a fifth of these passes were just completely wasted. So yes, you can blame some of that on a high average depth of target, but still, that is just not what you like to see from someone who has first-round potential in terms of throwing passes downfield. So very good mid-range performer. We know he has the arm strength to drive the ball downfield, but dude, you just got to be way more consistent than what you've presently shown within structure if you're going to try and be a professional quarterback. So while he is one of the country's top offensive executives, it's just that underlying concern with his ball placement metrics is a major concern, and it's definitely something to monitor this fall. So I'm excited to see what type of passer Garrett Nussmeier is going to be this fall, but based on a truncated sample and underlying accuracy concerns, I can only say he has an okay, flimsy floor at this point in time. Of course, playing behind Jaden Daniels each of the last 2 seasons has made his PT a little bit unconventional. He has seen a high degree of garbage time snaps, but we still have a fairly decent idea of what type of passer he is. In 2022, he was a heat seeker. He was the only SECer that season to finish top 5 in adjusted net passing yards per attempt with a bottom 5 interceptable pass rate. Well, this past season, he was a little bit more dependable down to down, and he definitely did not push the ball into harm's way as often. He tracked to have the lowest interceptable pass rate among our returning SECers. But like I mentioned, he can be a little bit inconsistent. So even though in our floor situations, we do like to see that his adjusted net passing yards per attempt was top 3, and he was top 5 in success rate, beating the golden plateau of 50%. The accuracy stuff was mid to concerning. Raw accuracy, uncatchable pass rate, they did get better, but his average depth of target moved backwards, and he had a single-digit explosive pass rate. And when providing more weight to the further his passes traveled, I mean, no one's going to like a bottom 3 depth-adjusted accuracy. So yes, you can see that high drop rate did additionally hurt his bottom line, but you got to see more consistently pushing the ball downfield. Of course, he is a guy that likes to do so. His overall ADOT was the second highest amongst our returners. He's going to be a guy that hunts for field flipping completions. So he's just got to get a lot better providing his guys catchable opportunities to go out and make plays. So even though I do think there are some concerns here, he has the traits to elevate LSU's offense and potentially get them to where they want to be in the playoffs this year. Diego Pavia. So he's an okay, flimsy passing floor candidate ahead of this fall. Even though I do like his accuracy within structure, his other stuff really failed to jump off the page. And of course, it's already a difficult assignment trying to project what a transfer quarterback is going to be in their new environment, especially since he was a G5 guy last year. But when looking at his play against his hardest opponents, you just cannot knock his structure placement figures. Top 5 interceptable pass rate, top 3 uncatchable pass rate, second best depth adjusted accuracy. You heard me correct. He has the second best depth adjusted accuracy among the SEC returners this fall. So he wasn't necessarily the most potent guy. He wasn't looking to push the ball downfield, and that did hurt his juice. He has a single-digit explosive pass rate ahead of this fall based on his play against his hardest opponents. But the big concern, which I'm sure you guys can see, is that high degree of drops. Hopefully that stuff stops immediately in Nashville this fall. So over a quarter of his passing floor sample this past fall resulted in Butterfingers, and that clearly did diminish his overall results. His success rate moved the wrong way, his first down touchdown rate moved the wrong way, and even though his average depth of target did move backwards as well, you only saw moderate gains in true down-to-down accuracy. So yes, there are some hang-ups on his profile, no doubt about it. And even though he is an undersized guy, he's a fairly good sack eraser and extender. It's just, hey man, what can you do within structure? Can you help elevate our offense? Can you help us meet our goals? Can you help drag this unit out from the cellar of the conference? I do believe he's going to be able to be more serviceable than a liability for this offense, but since he doesn't necessarily have a great environment, it's really tough to be too optimistic in what he can ultimately offer this offense. A little bit of a nuanced argument on one way or the other for Payton Thorne, but ultimately I decided to give him a low, firm passing floor ahead of this fall. So the big reason for that, he just threw the ball into harm's way too often for my liking, both overall and in our floor analysis. Just not what you'd like to see. Well into the danger zone in interceptable pass rates. So when you're looking at his overall results, he was basically bottom 5 across the board amongst our returners. But one big reason of optimism was his ball placement figures within structure. Top 5 uncatchable, depth adjusted, and accuracy percentage. So even though he necessarily wasn't pushing the ball downfield the whole often, you gotta like the fact that he was generally on target. And you can also talk yourself into having better results, assuming he doesn't suffer from a near 15% drop rate once again within structure. So when you're looking at his floor results, nothing whatsoever jumps off the page because of that, but because of a near 11% interceptable pass rate, like I mentioned earlier, it's really hard to get too on board with what he offers. No doubt Cam Coleman and KLS is going to help elevate Auburn's offense. It's just how much is Thorne going to be responsible himself. So just because of that little bit of carelessness and underlying inconsistency within that Auburn pass game, it's really hard for me to say that he has higher than a low passing floor ahead of the season. Taylen Green is a fun player. Do not kid yourself. He has next level size, arm strength, and north-south burst that does have a lot of scouts drooling over his potential. But look, he's yet to put all those traits together and be a consistent, dependable quarterback, let alone a trustworthy passer within structure. Very high degree of interceptables and uncatchables last year against his hardest opponents, and in fact, a fifth of his yards came off a handful of screen passes last year against the meat of his schedule. That's certainly something that doesn't translate or something that you can talk yourself into backing him this fall, but high degree of drops, certainly, his mobility certainly does help elevate wherever he's going to play football. But when you're just looking at him in structure without guys, hardly anything pops. Yes, he does have a top 5 depth adjusted accuracy. That is not worth nothing, but both his raw accuracy and uncatchable pass rates track to be bottom 5 amongst his new conference. And considering that his average depth of target hardly budged in that regard, that is a little bit of a concern. So yes, you can say a double-digit drop rate did undercut his profile, but he was just as likely to log an explosive pass as an interceptable in this context. That is certainly something that has to be addressed. Now, this spring, he did look like he was a better version of himself with Bobby Petrino. Petrino is a play caller that doesn't like to feature a whole lot of scheme elements. He definitely does prefer just to let his guy drop back and deal. And that is just something Green has just had a little bit of inconsistency doing. But if you can talk yourself into being a top performer in depth-adjusted accuracy with an elevation in supporting cast, maybe he could be one of the top newcomers within the SEC this fall. based on his traits. So Shapen might put up some decent numbers this fall thanks to playing in the super spread scheme, but based on what we've seen from him so far as a passer, I still think he's going to have a low, firm passing floor ahead of this fall. We know the super spread likes to maximize splits and verticality. I just don't think he has the arm talent to maximize that. Now, he's still going to go out and capture fairly serviceable results. It's just I don't trust his process whatsoever. Against his hardest opponents last year, he hardly jumped off the page in any instance. Bottom 3 results, bottom 5 process. So when we're looking at him in our floor in particular, it's never, ever, ever a good sign to see one's accuracy, depth adjusted accuracy, and uncatchable pass rate worsen, let alone when all 3 move backwards. So yes, a sixth of his passes resulting in drops is one way to see your results just be completely undercut. But when you're throwing the ball into harm's way as often as he did, it really does often lower his outlook. So his interceptable pass rate not only trumped his explosive pass rate, but finished in the double digits, both overall and in our floor situation. So unless the scheme does a whole lot of magic for him, he's still going to probably throw some lollipops and prevent Mississippi State from getting to ultimately where it wants to go. Not to say that he won't have a completely biff of a fall, but it's hard to say he'll be one of the conference's top passers in this regard. So these guys didn't have the volume to be included with the rest in our analysis, but I still wanted to say some things about them before moving forward. Starting with our high floor newcomer, Nico Ayamaleva of Tennessee. Yes, he's going to be in a super spread scheme. He's going to have a great environment. He's going to be elevated. Even this past season, Joe Milton, despite leaving plenty of plays on the field, was a fairly consistent quarterback thanks to the scheme's abundance for screens and RPOs. And now we have Nico, who's going to be a little bit more mobile, potentially see some more stuff outside the pocket. I think he's going to have the consistency that was lacking within Tennessee's scheme to have them have a high floor and potentially crack the playoff this fall. So some other guys, Brock Vandegrift. So he didn't have the most sexy spring whatsoever in Lexington. Of course, the dialogue coming out of the coaching staff is like they want him to just be a consistent, boring golfer. Just hit that 3-wood right down the middle of the fairway. Don't try any extra torque or things that could add extra distance, extra splash. Just go out there and execute what is asked of you. So that inherently says he's going to try and capture a high floor with a low ceiling operation. But since we have not seen much of him, I'm just going to go ahead and say he's going to have an okay outlook. Same is to be said for Jackson Arnold. So he's not the biggest passer, but he's a former 5-star. He's got the talent, and he is going to be playing in a scheme that gives him plenty of scheme elements to go out and execute. This past season against his hardest opponents in that very truncated sample size of his, basically 2/3 of his attempts used a scheme element. So that might maintain itself this next fall with the new play caller with Jeff Levy no longer there, but still I think he's going to have the talent to at least be a decent, dependable down-to-down passer for that offense. And then we got Lenora Sellers, the rec specs at South Carolina. So this is going to be an offensive line that has in the past provided a lot of adversity. They have not been the best blockers, and we have seen Spencer Rattler, despite being a fairly potent passer himself, pushing the ball downfield, be a little bit muted, having to attack the underneath areas of the defense and play hot potato just so those pressures don't win all the time. That's going to be a major element if Sellers going to be the best version of himself. How often can he go out and execute within structure? So I think he's going to have a little bit more of a flimsy outlook, but a fairly okay, good passing floor based on his ability himself to push the ball downfield. So there you have it. There are our passing floors for our 16 soon-to-be starters ahead of the 2024 SEC season. Again, some situations are more firm than flimsy, both by their environment and their operation, but still it gives you a fairly decent idea of how these guys can go out and execute what is asked of them within structure. Nothing is set in stone, but it's a fairly translatable exercise that you can see across all of college football. So I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Be sure to visit SECStatCat.com for Jimmy's and Joe's, X's and O's, and any stat you would like to know about your SEC football programs. Fun of advanced analytics, past charts, conceptual data that you just cannot find hardly anywhere else. And be sure to follow me at SEC_StatCat on X/Twitter. And be sure, again, to smash a subscription on this YouTube channel. Until next time, I am Clark Brooks telling you to Have a good one.